What's going on, Winnipeg sports fans all across the U.S. and Canada? You're now boarding the Winnipeg terminal with your host, Mike D'Andrea, along with Joe Pritchard and a pretty special guest. I got my daughter today. Well, maybe she doesn't like to be called a special guest, I suppose, but we'll just leave her chilled down here. But yeah, we've got a little bit of Jets news, and well, I don't know if I want to call it Bombers news or just Bombers blues. Yeah, Lauren's got the right idea here.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, we've got a lot to talk about today. So let's go ahead and set my daughter down so she can go play with her toys while we get down to business. And again, you're boarding the Winnipeg terminal. To say because she will not stop crying right now.
Well, like you alluded to in the opening, she's just thinking about the Bombers and how their offseason's gone so far.
You know what's funny about that though is we're talking about how it looks like a very heavy downgrade, but remember we were talking about the Jets offseason, and I think it was TSN graded the Jets a D for their offseason, and I mean look at how it's going for them so far.
Yeah, they had, and we've mentioned this too. They had a cohesive group that had power play issues last year. They decided to try to solve the power play issues by
Mm-hmm.
changing the dynamic of the group and adding different players. This year, they don't have that problem, so they don't really need to make that big, huge push, right? So I think that's going to end up
Right.
helping come trade deadline time. There won't be as much pressure to throw around assets. I thought it was a good idea last year to go ahead and take a shot at things, but this year I don't think you mess with things. I think it's working out too well to try to mess with things.
I'd have to agree. Like, there's a certain point, yeah, you want to tool up at the trade deadline like some other teams are, but by the same token, when you're playing the kind of hockey that you are right now, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And all four lines are just gelling really well, despite some injuries, most notably injury to our captain, who is arguably the best penalty killer on the team. And even at that, their penalty kill is still looking pretty stellar at this point.
Yeah, that seems to be working out, and there's a lot of depth at the forward position down with the Moose too. So
Mm-hmm.
you really don't need to make a big push to try to shore up any sort of perceived issues there. If you're going to make any sort of swing, maybe try to get the sixth defenseman, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we've left some holes occasionally, and I think Stanley's had a few too many chances, and we've lost a couple of good guys because we gave Stanley one too many chances. Most notably, Declan Chisholm. Uh, that was a key loss. Scooped up by the Wild, if I remember correctly, on the waiver
Uh-huh.
wire.
Hmm.
So going to a division rival like that just kind of hurts. But um, sorry about that. But you'll probably notice, for those that are watching, my shirt kind of looks like a Capitals shirt. And there's a reason why I'm wearing this, because if you can't read it, it says, "This team makes me drink." And while we did beat Washington in their own barn, they're still one of those teams that's just finding a way to win. And I think the great chase might have something to do with that as well. But we're trying to find ourselves alone at the top of the standings in the league, and Washington's just finding a way to win, except when they play Winnipeg.
Yep. Gotta get a little bit of help from some of those teams out east, right?
Yeah, right. Especially teams like I don't know, the dumpster fire that is the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh yeah, yeah. They are at the very end of a long stretch of winning. It's gonna take them some time to rebound for sure.
Oh yeah, and for the longest time, I mean, remember years ago when Pittsburgh and Washington were at the bottom of the standings, and then all of a sudden you get Crosby and Ovechkin, and they go right to the top of the standings. Every year they meet each other in the playoffs. It's like the
Yeah,
Chiefs
and
and
then
Bills.
10 years of hearing about that on and over and over and over and over again.
Mhm. But now it's Washington's window outlasted Pittsburgh's, which, if you ask me, I'm actually a little shocked at that. But I mean, could we very well have a Winnipeg Washington Stanley Cup final?
That'd be interesting. That's for
I
sure.
think that would be
I
a
don't think
good one.
anybody had that picked at the beginning of the year.
Oh no, not at all. But I think it would be a competitive one. But the big issue is Ovechkin, who he would very likely have Gretzky's record by then. However, I mean, Ovechkin owns Connor Hellebuck. He owns the Jets. And in a Stanley Cup final, we've seen Ovi there before, and we've seen how he played, and Russian machine never breaks. Uh, so it would be a good one, but it would scare me at the same time.
Yeah, but like who doesn't he own, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Maybe the
So
Penguins in the playoffs.
that's about it, right?
Yeah.
And they don't have to worry about that this year, that's for sure.
No, they are most likely. I think it's a pretty safe bet that they're not going to make it anywhere except an early off season. But speaking of the Capitals, I just wanted to recap the game, pun slightly intended. Um, Jets came out firing right from the get go, which is something with a team like Washington that you kind of need right off the bat. And two unlikelies were the two goals. Well, I should say one unlikely and one he's been on a hot streak this year. But Cole Perfetti or Goal Perfetti with Nemesnikov and Pionk on the assists. And then shortly thereafter, Dylan Sandberg with his fourth of the year to make it 2-0. And then, of course, right in the second period, right off the bat, who scores for the Capitals? None other than the former Jet himself, Pierre-Luc Dubois. But
Yeah,
it
you've heard a
improved
lot
to
less. You've heard a lot less from him this year because he seems to be finally have found a place to at least contribute, right?
yeah, and a place that he's not going to maybe not whine his way out of like he did out of Columbus, like he did out of Winnipeg, like he did out of LA. But I mean, truth be told, I'm actually happy for him. I think that he just was a guy that couldn't find that fit, and I think he finally found a place that he fits in.
Yeah,
But
it took him
yeah, then
enough tries, but if it's gonna stick, let's see it.
yeah, if you're going to be a journeyman and you finally land in the right place, I mean, we've had our fair share of journeymen move their way through before as well. But yeah, then the Caps come back and make it a 3-2 game. Goal from Taylor Radish, and third period, Josh Morrissey puts it 4-2. Tom Wilson and of course Ovechkin tie it right back up. And then who else in overtime but Josh Norrisy himself? And yes, I'm gonna go out there boldly and say Josh Norrisy.
Well,
He
maybe
is,
someday people will figure that out.
yeah. I feel like I don't know what it is, but and I will clump Minnesota in with this too. But I feel like the northern portion of the Central Division, there just seems to be this wall around where there's some talent there, like unbelievable talent, but I feel like it's overshadowed by these bigger markets that are either on the coast or teams like Chicago, for example. And Lauren, you are very talkative today, honey.
Yeah, she definitely has some good points to make.
Yeah.
She's
I should
probably
have put her in her jersey.
absolutely.
She does have a Jets jersey for the record. She has two of them, actually. She has a Heritage Blues throwback, and she just has a home blue. Yeah, you see yourself, huh? Didn't think that she would be making a podcast appearance, but that's what'll happen when she's just home with dad, and dad has to be a responsible parent too. But pulled out all of her toys back there. She doesn't want anything to do with them. She just crawled over to me a couple times.
Nope. That's what being a dad's about sometimes.
Yeah, I don't want my toys. I just want my dad, which I
Mm-hmm.
mean is flattering. I will say that. But another point in Jets news that I want to make is not only the streak that they're on now, but last night, who other than Eric Comrie with the shutout against a team like Carolina?
Yeah, he wasn't getting a lot of goal support, so he just decided, you know what? Let's not need that. Let's take care of it ourselves here.
And it was funny that I believe it was Arneal that was talking about the lack of goal support that Comrie has gotten. That's probably what Comrie's thinking too. But yeah, he was getting such a lack of support that now he shuts a team like Carolina out and gets 3 goals to boot. So he finally gets the support that he needs, and he just decides, let's just pitch a shutout.
Yep. We need to win those kind of games to keep up with Washington. So, a
Mm-hmm.
big performance, definitely needed to keep the pace here.
Yeah, and Paul Maurice couldn't get the job done against the Capitals, so that bothered me. He might be trying to sabotage his former team.
Oh no, he's got more important things to worry about, like defending a Stanley Cup championship. So,
Yeah, and I think that he loved it. He loved Winnipeg, loves the city, still does, loves the city. So, a great overall guy too. Very, very hockey smart. Obviously, he won his cup in Florida, so good on him. But how long has he been coaching? My
a
gosh,
long time. I don't
very
have the
long.
number on that, but a long time seems right.
You know what? I got to now. This is what happens when you don't have the show notes. You just start to go down the rabbit holes, and then you look up these fun facts. So, because I know that he coached for the Whalers at one point. So it's at least been since the early 90s.
Yes, and I'm old enough to remember the Whalers. I don't think you are.
Now, what was it, 95 that they moved down to Carolina, I believe.
Yeah, right
And
around then. Yep.
for just for the record, I was born in 93. Yeah. And you were born in 2024. Coaching career, 1988 was his first year coaching. I guess that was for the Windsor Spitfires, though. So let's look up the NHL. Um, the Whalers was his first team in the NHL. So, wow, yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's 30 years plus then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't remind me of that.
I'm older than you, so don't remind me
I
of that
know,
either.
and that's the thing. Like now, I'm finally at that age where I could say, "Oh yeah, 30 years ago, I was there." Might not remember it all, but I was there.
Uh-huh. No, I have some fond memories of 30 years ago, which is just I'd rather not dwell on that point at the moment.
30 years ago, I was about here.
Yeah. No, I was watching the CFL by then, so yeah, I've got some years behind me at that point.
Yeah, well, not to jump around a little bit, but might as well get to the bad news of the CFL.
Yeah, I don't know if it's all in. I mean, there's portions of it that are bad. I will definitely agree there. Losing a guy like Kenny Lawler, a guy that's an impact player, is always going to hurt. Losing a guy like
Mm-hmm.
Drew Wolotarski, even with it being a team decision, a guy that was a security blanket for many, many years, that's always going
Mm-hmm.
to hurt too. Whether the team thought he was physically capable of going on anymore or thought they had better choices, either way, not losing a guy like that is never a positive. And then, of course, Adam Bighill. I don't know if the last show we had we were already talking about this, but Adam Bighill being told that he was no longer going to be a Bomber physically clearly doesn't seem to have the same jump as he used to, especially with all the injuries in the last couple of years. But when you lose a guy that's been the heart and soul of your defense for 8 years, it feels like we're going to have that 2025 being the target year, the last year of a core group. It kind of feels like that's no longer really the case, and we still have some left from the core group that was winning Grey Cups a couple years ago, but I think it's 1 year sooner than we were hoping for, where we have a new core group starting to develop.
And it's kind of unfortunate because obviously where the Grey Cup is this year, but you know who does seem to be tooling up? Edmonton.
Yeah, no, Scout lets us know whenever Edmonton does something important, like coming to an agreement with Tyrell Ford. I was hoping the Fords would be playing in Winnipeg this year, not Edmonton, but it's good to see them back together. Hamilton's also taking a chunk out of Winnipeg because Ted Gavea left from the scouting department and being assistant GM to run the show in Hamilton. So Liam Dobson, Lawler, a few others have gone over that way already. So clearly Hamilton's going to have some of the same core principles as Winnipeg's had. So that could do nothing but help them because they've been kind of lost to the wilderness the past couple of years, even with the talent they've had.
And at this point, who isn't taking a chunk out of Winnipeg for real?
Yeah, but even more so, if anybody's going to know which players to help build a new thing in Hamilton to take from Winnipeg, it's going to be Ted Gavea. I'd go so far as to say he was the biggest loss the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have suffered this offseason. And that's saying a lot. I mean, Buck Pierce is no longer there. Offensive coordinator went to BC to be the head coach. Of course, we're talking about Kenny Lawler, Tyrell Ford, Adam Bighill, although that one was a little bit more organic, unfortunately. But losing Gavea, who's been a part of the front office core for so long and knows what the team is looking for, Danny McManus is still around. That's going to help. Kyle Walters is still there. Mike O'Shea is still the head coach, but Ted Gavea was a big piece of this. So him being gone makes me start worrying more about the late 2020s than I was in November.
Yeah, because that is your future, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, you can kind of work with some guys that you have now, maybe make them your core, try to draft and develop, maybe free agency, try to build a new core. However, if you don't have that kind of mastermind, if you will, to build the core with the right pieces at the right price, you're not going to have as much of a future. You're not going to have the core like you've had that's made the Grey Cup. I mean, we're turning into the Buffalo Bills at this point, but made the Grey Cup how many years in a row? Winning one of those, so
2. Let's not forget 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the faith in knowing that the team was going to be able to fill holes when other teams would pick their free agents and throw big money. Kenny Lawler's leaving for the second time. He's done this before where he's gone for a better offer. Teams are going to have more money to throw around than the Bombers are going to because they have this core of high-priced talent. They've been dealing with being picked at for the last 5 years, but they've always been able to replenish. What happened to Calgary at the end of the 2010s is they stopped being able to replenish. I'm worried about the same thing happening to Winnipeg too.
I think that we're going to turn into the Stampede.
Well, let's hope not. There's still going to be benefits to coming to Winnipeg that Calgary is not going to be able to have, such as an actual stadium. And it sounds like a lot of what Calgary does is below CFL standards as far as what players expect from their facilities and their meals and such too. So Winnipeg's going to have the advantage on Calgary on that until they fix that. At the same time, you'll be able to start seeing a talent slide, and the the records are going to start being a little bit worse every year, and hopefully they can find a way to keep that from collapsing. But as we've seen in Calgary the past couple of years, when it goes, and it takes a lot to rebuild from that point.
Yeah. Well, speaking of windows, kind of jumping around a little bit again, going back to Jets news. We kind of hit on this a little bit earlier about TSN grading the Jets with a D in the offseason as things didn't look very great. But we've managed to keep the same core together for years, basically since our deep playoff run. Ironically, the year that Washington won the cup. But how long of a window do you think that the Jets have, especially factoring in all the question marks around one key piece to the Jets core, as Nikolai Ehlers has a lot of question marks around what his future with the Jets is going to be after this year.
And I love Nikolai Ehlers.
I do too. I don't want him to go.
Yeah. But the Jets have the depth to pull from the Moose if indeed Ehlers is somewhere else next year. Especially, I could think Brad Lambert would probably be the first shot, but you have a few others too that could come in and fill that hole at a lot better price, and then you may be able to go after a stronger defenseman to maybe play your fourth spot, or
and
even
a great feel-good story too. Speaking of some of the depth players and most players, how about Parker Ford?
Oh, of course. And he's not even like first and foremost on my mind when it comes to, hey, look, let's keep the forwards being replenished from the Moose and start looking for defensemen elsewhere. But it's nice to have him around too.
Yeah, it was great to see him get his first start right where he grew up, score a goal. Like, that was just such a feel-good story. And I saw on like the Facebook groups that were all saying that his sister's reaction to the goal was better than the goal itself. I can't disagree.
The family aspect on those things are usually high entertainment after the fact. That's for sure.
Growing up in Pittsburgh, one of the, like, speaking of family aspects, Evgeny Malkin's parents basically became local celebrities because they were at like every game, and they always show anytime that he had like an assist or a goal or whatever have you, camera automatically went to Mr. and Mrs. Malkin, and it was just like watching them have that raw reaction. They've watched their son his whole life, and they've seen him score goal after goal because it's Evgeny Malkin, mind you.
Yeah, he's had plenty of them.
Yeah, and everyone is like his first one. And I love seeing that with the families that travel with their significant other, son, whatever have you. But yeah, now got a little distracted here trying to get Lauren to simmer down a little bit. But want to talk about, there's only one game before, of course, the Four Nations tournament, which I'm actually excited about that. I know that some are like, why do we have to stop the season, blah, blah, blah. I get it from the injury perspective. Like someone gets hurt, that for games that don't really carry much weight within the realm of the NHL season itself. But I think it's still going to be a fun tournament to watch.
Yeah, anytime you get best on best in an international setting, those are the games that kept me interested in hockey. When I really had, before the Jets, I didn't really have a team to call my own. So those were always the games that were the ones I would look forward to the most.
Mm-hmm. And they're always fun to, especially like it's going to be different in this case, but like in the Olympics, you got the bigger surface. You also don't have the trapezoid. Like those sort of instances make it pretty fun to watch too. Um, but we do got to get down to business for one more game before the Four Nations tournament, and it is another home game against the Islanders. So that one, another East Coast team, Eastern Conference team. Players to watch for the Jets, of course. Last 5 games: Kyle Connor 4 goals, Gabriel Velarde 4 assists, and Kyle Connor 7 points. So in 5 games, that's a pretty good stretch. And of course, we're in the midst of a winning streak. But Simon Holmstrom from the Islanders, 3 goals in the last 5 games and 6 points in the last 5 games too. Ilya Sorokin, 2.58 goals against average, 910 save percentage, 3 shutouts on the year. And who backs him up other than Semyon Varlamov, who is having an off year, but that comes with age. Let's be honest. He's no spring chicken. He's got a save percentage below 900, goals against 289, 3 wins, 4 losses, 3 overtime losses. And then comes the Jets goaltenders, which Comrie's numbers actually don't look that bad, considering he has a losing record. 5 wins, 7 losses, 1 overtime loss. 2.58 goals against average, though, and 912 save percentage. 1 shutout. So pretty solid for a backup. And then you have Connor Hellebuck. Do I even need to say stats?
No, he's good.
33 wins, 7 losses, 2 overtime losses, 204 goals against, 925 save percentage, 6 shutouts. Good Lord. Both teams are hot, though. Last 10 games, they have matching records. Islanders 8-2-0, Jets 8-2-0. This matchup again, Winnipeg, but play them again on March 4th in New York. Power play, it's not even a competition. Jets first in the league on the power play, 33.8%, compared to the bottom feeders, 32nd in the league, with the Islanders 12% on the power play.
Which means the Islanders are scoring 2 on the power play, right? That's how this all
don't
works.
say that. Yeah, special teams has not been kind to the Islanders this year. 32nd in power play, 31st in penalty kill, with only a 70.5% penalty kill. So the Islanders are going to have to be disciplined if they want to have a chance, I think, on special teams anyways. They're going to have to play very disciplined. Jets have a middle-of-the-road penalty kill, 16th in the league. But, yeah, goaltending, Jets 238 goals against per games played, first in the league. Islanders 285 goals against. So, but the Jets, of course, riding a 7-game winning streak. Can they keep that hot streak going into the Four Nations tournament?
Well, certainly seems like the matchup is set up for them to be able to. Now let's hope we get an official that can't stop blowing the whistle, and we'll be all set.
Yeah. So, but yeah, then you get the week off, and then go on the road, quick jaunt down to St. Louis, come home to play the Sharks, and then you're back on the road again. So that why are you throwing that? But yeah, then you go back on the road for Ottawa, Nashville, and back home for 1 game. So it's a little bit of bouncing back and forth. Going to have some jet lag, no pun intended, once we come off the Four Nations tournament.
Well, they'll be rested before that. So that'll help.
Yep. Well, that pretty much covers all the Jets news. Things are pretty quiet with the trade deadline approaching, but as we said earlier, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. And
got any more Bombers blues that you want to cover?
I think I've whined enough for this episode anyway. Free agency is officially starting next week, but free agency, they have a tampering window these days, so a lot of players
Mhm.
have signed already, even though they won't be able to put pen to paper until next week. So we'll
Mhm.
have a lot to cover the next time around. Hopefully, a few more pieces of good news, but cross our fingers.
So to land this plane, what's your favorite memory of when your son was this age? Funny story, any like feel good story, whatever have you?
Just the day to day, right?
Mhm.
Because at this point, they're just starting to discover who they are a little bit, and they're just starting to discover the outside world a little bit more so. So just the day to day, really, it's I would say you still got a little bit of time before they're gonna start meaningfully interacting with the outside world and then starting to say things that'll shock you and make you laugh at the same time. So you've got that to look forward to, but at this point, this is the discovery age.
Yeah, she is not around me for projects when I'm doing projects for a very good reason, because there might
Uh-huh.
be some words that fly out that aren't necessarily safe for work.
Yep, that's for sure.
All right. Well, this is the Winnipeg terminal. We are clear for landing for the dub. Go Jets, go.